Welcome everyone we'll call this meeting to order, this committee of the whole for April 19th, and we welcome everyone who's tuning in from home and our members of the public, and also the people, the members of council and our staff that are here tonight. I'll ask everyone in council if they could please turn their cell phones off or to mute, and we will move on to item number 2. Ms. Basula-Collison.
That South Huron Committee of the Whole approves the agenda as presented.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Denemy, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries a 7. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest under item 3. Are there any disclosures at this time from members of the committee of the whole? Not seeing any. Thank you. Move on to reports 4.1, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Basula-Collison.
The Transportation Master Plan provides a comprehensive and attainable transportation blueprint that guides future transportation related studies, projects, initiatives, and decisions. The state of the infrastructure is the first part of this transportation plan to be brought forward to council and is the focus of tonight's committee of the whole. The second part of the plan includes an active transportation plan, which will include a long-term vision for recreation trail corridors and designing a policy for sidewalk installation when planning new subdivisions or street reconstruction projects. And South Huron was successful in receiving a grant from Infrastructure Canada under the Active Transportation Fund for part 2. So this state of the infrastructure provides the municipality an inventory of the existing roads and condition assessment for municipal roads and a sidewalk condition assessment. And we have Ken Logdenberg from BM Ross, and he will be presenting the report this evening.
Thank you and welcome, Ken. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead whenever you're ready, and good to see you tonight.
Okay. I will switch it over to the screen, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to council again. I'll switch my screen over to the presentation, and then I'll get started here. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll just there, put it up to full size. Okay, so this state of the road infrastructure, we gathered the information 2001 and been updated. We've worked through some things back and forth with staff to finalize and assemble this report, and I'm going to go through a little bit of that, but also give you more of a general explanation of the process that's been included here and the results of that process. So,
excuse me, Ken. I'm not sure if you could lean into your mic a bit more. I just want to make sure we can hear you okay.
Okay. I'll pull my laptop a little closer. Maybe that'll help a little. Is that helping a little better?
Yes, that seems to be better. Thank you.
Okay. So the agenda for the presentation today, I've got let's discuss the scope of the study, the road assessment, inventory and observations, the priority scoring methodology that was used, the road maintenance and capital improvement needs, cost comparison with gravel, LCB or low class bituminous and high class bituminous asphalt, suggested budget amounts. Then we'll talk about some sidewalk inventory, the assessment method and recommendations there. We'll provide some concluding comments and an opportunity for questions. Change this. Okay. Jumping ahead. Okay. So the scope of the assessment, we prepared maps and an inventory of all the assets with all the road assets within your municipality. I'm in a call, please. Oh. We entered traffic count data that's been supplied by the municipality. We've reviewed the road sections in the field, and that was based on a visual assessment that was performed by driving all the road sections and reviewing all the, and then we reviewed the sidewalk sections. Assembled and analyzed the data that was collected and provided. Then we presented our recommendations to staff, incorporated some requested changes into the schedule, and provided the data to be used for the asset management report. Okay, so the asset management, the method, there's the MTO methods and inventory manual from 1991 that was used as a general guide as to how the roads and roads were assessed and how we prioritize the needs. As we're going through this road assessment, we provided ID numbers in all the road sections, basically doing it generally one block at a time. But if there was a paved section that stopped halfway in between, we might split that into two sections. Then we provide surface type, the structure condition ratings, drainage ratings, and the general observations while we were reviewing the roads. A list of improvement ideas. We're generally what we do is we try to assign the suggested improvement idea as we're going, instead of trying to just do it based on statistical numbers, and that we find it helps to provide better recommendations for the road improvement methods. And it's all based on a visual assessment. Construction history information that's been provided by staff would be uploaded into our forms, and that's helpful to help make decisions on rehabilitation methods. Deterioration rates were used to help predict the theoretical year of need for each of the road sections. And we have different depreciation rates, or deterioration rates, I mean, for different road types and different traffic ranges to help provide a little more realistic projections as to the remaining life for your different road sections. We assembled the scores of the different road parameters to further prioritize the needs. And this is an example of the appraisal sheets that our technicians use in the field. On the left-hand side, they're entering all the parameters to help define the roads, and they include condition ratings at the bottom. On the right-hand side, they provide spot road improvements would be localized things in one location. Specific maintenance would be the type of maintenance that might go for the whole length of a road. And other construction work could be maybe some storm drainage improvements or other work that might be needed along that section of road. So we can identify that we're in the field, and it helps to provide cost projections that we can use in the reports. At the bottom is where we would put the information pertaining to the history of road repair work that's taken place in the past. That might help a little better. Down here is the where the history information is kept. Okay, jump ahead. This priority scoring, this figure just helps to illustrate the relationships between the information we gather in the field and how we work towards the priority scoring. On the left-hand side, there's three key parameters that we look at. There's the performance grades, which is a score to say, is this road built up to the type of standard and the way it should be built, or does it have a lot of high maintenance needs? We would have a score for that. Second parameter is a probability failure, or the condition rating for the road. And the third parameter is the consequence of failure, which it takes into account the traffic data and sort of how important that road is for your road network. We take those parameters, put them together, and these two generally help to define describe your level of service that's being provided. The other two parameters help to define the risk, whether you've got high risk of having a road and consequences from unhappy patrons, or that's sort of your risk, or you have a risk for high costs coming in the future. The two of those are then put together to come up with a theoretical priority score. And when we go through it, we put different weightings on these to help work our way through and come up with a theoretical scores. One thing, and I'll talk about this again briefly, but the preventative maintenance needs, those are things that often help to save you costs in the long run. We have to go through the different road sections and think about how they could be incorporated, and we almost have to do some of that manually to try to find the appropriate method to apply the preventative maintenance methods, and we do that as we work our way through the assessment. So the scoring system, it helps to create some risk scores and level of service scores that can be used with your asset management. Performance grades, they help, and they allow the ability to identify other deficiencies with your road systems and put some emphasis on addressing safety concerns or substandard assets. It provides a theoretical priority score for the improvements. And it's considered sort of a simplified scoring method or concept that can be used with other type of assets as you're trying to prioritize your needs. And the scoring system, it's intended as a guide when creating a priority list, but there's other external factors that can have an influence on the priorities. For example, you may have water main needs, or you may have some other bridge needs or something. So there are times when you'll want to adjust your priorities for your road infrastructure improvements to correspond with that other work. Scoring system issue, again, just to summarize some of the issues with using the theoretical scoring system. You know, it does not help to identify the preventative maintenance, so you have to take a look at those things afterwards or separately. There may be some overwhelming safety needs that have to be addressed, and some of those have to be addressed in the short term with maintenance repairs, and some of them you want to address more long term. Cost saving strategies such as economies of scale. If you have a few roads within a short area, you may want to group them together, even though maybe only one or two of them are ready. They're a high priority right now based on the scoring system, but the other ones are close, and you can save some money by pooling them together. There's needs for other infrastructure in the area. I can mention if you had water main needs or something, you may have to pull the road work ahead. Financial obligations or funding availability, and other activities and development that's taking place within the town. So therefore, the scoring system, it should be used as a guide when sorting through your list of needs, and then you adjust your priorities after that. So the next I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the information that we gathered, some statistical information about your road inventory. In the top left, you'll see your road surface types. There's the 4 road surface types that you have within the municipality, a total of 354 kilometers, with 179 being gravel, 24 kilometers of LCB, 30 kilometers of HCB with only 1 lift of asphalt, and 120 kilometers of asphalt, high-class bituminous roads with 2 lifts of asphalt. On the right side, this is the roadside environment. So again, we have the same total, of course, but this is grouping them based on, is it an urban road that's in town with curb and gutter? Is it a semi-urban, which typically you'll have a shallow swale and you might have sidewalks and they're in town, but you don't have curb and gutter, and you would often have maybe a sub drain or something to help provide a bit of drainage along that road. And then there's rural road sections, which basically have your full ditch and down to the proper grade to allow drainage. In this table down here, we usually provide this for the clients just to have an appreciation for how much work typically should be done within a year. We've listed the total. If you take the total length of gravel roads, if you assume you have 100 years life before a gravel road is repaired or reconstructed, it suggests that about 1.8 kilometers of gravel road should be reconstructed each year. And we've done the same with the low-class bituminous, which they have to be resurfaced regularly. And an HCB, if you only have 1 lift of asphalt. Similar with HCB, if you have 2 lifts of asphalt, the expected life is about 30 years. And if you have 120 kilometers of asphalt of high-class bituminous roads, that works out to about 4 kilometers of paved roads that should be rehabilitated each year or reconstructed. Okay, if I'll just jump over the next slide. This next slide, it shows the condition ratings for the road sections. Now this is showing the condition rating of the road surface. And you can see here, we've got some well, surface ratings here, the structural ratings are here. I'll discuss them in a minute. But the surface ratings are based on the condition on the surface of the road. And for example, with the HCB, you're looking at how many cracks and some ride quality issues. But you're mostly looking at what you see from the top. And we find that the road surface condition rating it's a good parameter to help prioritize, but we also want to take into consideration that structural rating when we're trying to figure out what method of repairs are appropriate for the road, because a road could have similar amount of cracks, but it might be deteriorated for different reasons. It might deteriorate because of age, or it might be deteriorating because the structural integrity of the road is not appropriate, and you're getting wheel rutting or something like that taking place within the road. So that's why when we assess the roads, we assign two condition ratings, one for the road surface, another one for a structural rating. In here, it's showing that, for example, with your HCB, you've got a reasonably decent distribution, with most of them in that 7, a score of 7, with 10 being in good condition. 5 and under is where the roads are in poor enough condition that you would typically recommend rehabilitation or replacement or reconstruction of the road surface. I don't know if there's questions. We'll move on, and we can maybe come back if there's questions. I haven't seen hands coming up or anything. I think.
Any questions right now, members of council? Okay, Councillor Need, go ahead.
I'm just curious about how the traffic counts are calculated and over what period of time were they calculated?
Ken?
So the traffic count data was supplied by the municipality. And I may have to let the municipal staff kind of clarify what year the data was from. And typically they don't analyze every single road. They'll analyze a representative sample, and then they'll take some of that traffic data and extrapolate on other segments. But Don, are you available to comment when the traffic data was collected? Or Shane?
I can answer that. Through you, Mayor Finch, the traffic data was collected through the non-peak summer hours. So pretty much when kids go out of school, that's when we don't do traffic counts, because it's only pretty much 2 months out of the year. And then they're up for 48 hours consecutive. And then that's how we get the traffic data. Main Street's a little different. They stay up a little longer, and just because of the influx of up and down with the traffic.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Need.
Yep. Thank you very much, Shane.
Thank you. And Councillor Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The 54 locations that it refers to, is it possible to see those locations?
Now, when you say 54,
That's what the report says, that there's traffic counts at 54 locations throughout the municipality. So,
okay. I'm wondering if I have.
or something that we could receive after, that would be fine. I just curious which roads we're actually doing the traffic counts on, or traffic assessments on.
Yeah, we should be able to provide some of that information. I know we were given some of it. It may not be documented in there just because we were supplied all that information, and we may have been supplied the sort of the end assumptions of what we should assume for the different road categories, because your staff are familiar with where traffic typically turns and where their objections are, so they can use that in their knowledge to help more accurately predict the amount of where the traffic goes within the municipality. But yes, I could, we can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Ken. Go right ahead. Proceed.
Okay, so this is the second slide. This shows the condition ratings for the road structural parameters. So as you can see in here, the asphalt roads are showing maybe a little better structural base, and that's good because you have an asphalt road, you would like to have a better base in it. You don't want to have your asphalt deteriorating because of an inadequate base. If you're spending the money to put asphalt on, you fix up the base of the road. However, you'll notice a bunch of the gravel roads are a little lower from a structural, and that's not uncommon because that would include things like your side roads and roads that don't experience a lot of traffic. And sometimes in the spring, they're not as sound, and they don't have as good a drainage as some of the other roads. So that's not uncommon to find them have a poorer rating than paved surfaces. Down at the bottom, we just presented the information in sort of a different way. So in this case, you have your HCB asphalt and very poor. You can see there's just in the 5% range there, and in the poor 14%, 34, 19, 29 as you work your way up to roads with the surface rating a little higher, and below we've got the same sort of just graph and figures showing for the LCB roads. General observations. So reviewing the information, our general comments that were identified in the body's report were condition rating suggests that many of the roads are due for reconstruction within the next few years. There are some areas where drainage improvements were recommended and ditch cleanout work. The LCB roads, their appearance, they appear to perform well for short terms, but these roads are not being surfaced quickly enough. With the limited number of LCB roads within the municipality, it may not be financially beneficial to continue with the LCB program. We noticed with some of the pricing that we've seen that you guys have paid in the past, that was sort of a discussion that came up with staff, and we had to admit that yes, you are paying quite high prices, probably because of the small volume of roads you're doing. On a relative basis, there are more roads, sections at Exeter and Centralia and Crediton in need of work within the next 15 years than elsewhere within the municipality. There were some low traffic gravel roads with a poor base that are soft in the spring, but it's difficult to justify doing reconstruction for some of these, or for most of them. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the minimum maintenance standards. Minimum maintenance standards there's the Ontario Separate Regulations 23902 is defined the minimum maintenance standards for highways, which includes some rules for sidewalks and for bike lane maintenance requirements. The regulation, it sets out a system to that for different classifications of highways, and based on the speed and the average daily traffic count, the highway classification values are used to determine the minimum maintenance standards. These minimum maintenance standards include things like patrol frequency, weather maintenance, snow and ice removals, road maintenance works, such as fixing potholes, cracks, shoulders drop off, signs, illumination inspections. But once the municipality is aware of the maintenance issues, the regulation sets out how many days you have to complete the temporary or permanent repairs. Down below, we provided a table which shows the distribution for the roads within your municipality. You've got so many class 3 roads, class 4 roads, class 5, and class 6. The class 1 would be your major artillery roads that you don't have within your municipality. And class 6 are your back roads with very low traffic volume on them. The minimum maintenance standards, they also include some criteria for the sidewalks, and the sidewalk maintenance includes a requirement for annual inspections of the sidewalks within the municipality. Maintenance requirements are for things like if you have discontinuity of height, say if there's a ledge there that jumps up about 2 centimeters between the panels, they're to be identified and corrected. There's encroachment like branches. Say if you have branches hanging over top of the road, the sidewalks, they'd be trimmed back. And winter maintenance for snow and ice removal and sidewalk patrols. But again, they're similar to before. Once the issue is identified, then the municipalities to work their way through and correct those things with a specific time period. Now, there's also accessibility standards, and that's the AODA standards. They're stricter than the minimum maintenance standards, but they only apply to how you construct brand new sidewalks. They're not how you have to maintain your existing sidewalks. And there are options for doing temporary sidewalk repairs, such as highlighting with paint. If there's an adjustment in height along the sidewalk, cold patching or grinding to remove those lifts. And that kind of goes with the minimum maintenance standards, which we see being taking place in most municipalities. Gravel road maintenance tasks, just to recap or just to summarize, they're maintenance to maintain suitable drainage for the road base as required. That would include cleaning out ditches and trimming back trees. Road surfaces would be every second year. They'd be placing some calcium chlorides. Well, they place a calcium chloride annually, and you'd be resurfacing the roads with some additional granular A every second year. They may stretch the resurfacing to every third year on some roads, on some of the no winter maintenance type roads. Grading of the roads takes place numerous times throughout the year to minimize the potholes, wheel rutting, and maintain the crossfall. And based on some information we've obtained from municipalities, spend on average about $446,000 for resurfacing, calcium, and annual granite tonnage. And we're suggesting, based on the kilometers of roads, that you wouldn't want the volume to drop under the 33,000 metric ton to maintain the current level of performance of your gravel roads.
Just one second, Ken. Go ahead, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thank you. And just on this slide, so based on the number of gravel roads that we have, you're recommending 33,000. Now, our last budget, we've got 28,000 for this year and had 29,000 for last year. We haven't had 33,000 since 2018. So I guess I want to note that because obviously some of the road conditions that we're seeing right at the moment, I think, is because of lack of gravel being put on them. So anyways, just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, thank you for identifying that. I should maybe clarify that when we did that calculation, we were probably assuming that all roads would be done every second year. It may be a little bit less because of some of the no winter maintenance roads. That might be sort of the discrepancy there too. So I just want to flag that might explain the difference there to some extent.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
Okay, if I jump ahead to the next slide. Low class and high class bituminous road maintenance. So with those, you want to maintain your suitable drainage for the road base, again with doing ditch clean out, work for the road surfaces when required. We haven't listed it here, but similar with the trees, because having a lot of tree cover can sometimes affect the performance of the asphalt if it's canopied right over top. Applying road surface gravel as needed, crack sealing and asphalt patching sections of the HCB at appropriate times. An additional allowance of $230,000 per year is recommended to address specific maintenance needs on the low class bituminous and high class bituminous roads. Additional costs to do shoulder grading, line painting, cold mix patching on the LCB and HCB roads are to be addressed by staff as they're doing their roadside maintenance. Okay. So analysis of the data for the low class bituminous roads. Over the last 5 years, resurfacing has taken place in less than about 3 kilometers of the low class bituminous roads versus a recommended average of 15 kilometers. So you spent $129,000 in the last 5 years versus suggested budget of $129,000 per year for the low class bituminous. And some of the low class bituminous road are experiencing relatively high traffic volumes year round, and warrant upgrading to high-class bituminous. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the low-class bituminous in future slides here. We did some probable cost comparisons between maintaining the gravel roads, low-class bituminous and high-class bituminous roads over the service life. And with this comparison, we're looking at annual maintenance costs. So for the gravel, that would include your gravel and calcium placement. With the low-class bituminous, that would be just the maintenance work that may be required, like doing localized patching and shoulder work. For the high-class bituminous, you'd include some crack sealing and shoulder work, line painting. But we also include in the maintenance cost the application of sand and salt, which we get the information from the municipality, but it's just something to keep in mind. Once you pave the road, there is some additional cost that you encounter because of that. So then we have the annual capital costs. So again, with the gravel roads, we're almost never reconstructing them. We're generally just putting a new layer of gravel on top. With a low-class bituminous, they should be resurfaced regularly. And with high-class bituminous, they are, they're more expensive to reconstruct, and they're done at more like 20-year increments. But we have taken that and spread that over to an annual basis when we present it in this graph. So the assumptions that were used with the gravel roads, it includes resurfacing every 2.5 years on average with the calcium chlorides and grading about 5 times a year. Includes materials, equipment, and the labor from the township staff to do that work. The low-class bituminous includes emulsion application every 6 years, so shoulder maintenance, salt and sand purchase cost. If resurfacing frequently drops below 3 years, the cost would increase to 15,000 kilometers per year. So that what I'm saying is if you have a low-class bituminous road that has a lot of truck traffic on it, and you have to apply the low-class bituminous frequently to keep the road in good condition, your costs would could potentially increase substantially up to almost the cost of the high-class bituminous or above. So I wanted to show that as a comparison. With high-class bituminous, it includes reconstructing the roads every 20 years, crack sealing or microsurfacing, shoulder work, patching, sand and salt purchasing costs. So with all of the options, we're assuming that the road base is suitable and it's a suitable drainage when we use the life expectancies that we're presenting here. So we've got listed here the road sections that it's been proposed that they be converted from low-class bituminous to high-class bituminous. And the municipality's direction is to upgrade the remaining 24 kilometers of low-class bituminous to high-class bituminous. High-class bituminous surfaces distribute the loads better and can perform better when exposed to heavier and more frequent wheel loads. Just in some municipalities, they found the low-class bituminous because of the Mennonite traffic and their buggies. They've got the concentrated loads. They found they don't perform very well either. Next, with the low-class bituminous, one of the advantages of it is it will flex and it will sometimes knit back together and will be more forgiving if the road has poor drainage. But drainage improvements may be warranted as you do that transition from your low-class bituminous to the high-class bituminous, because the high-class bituminous is more susceptible to damage due to frost action if you don't have adequate drainage.
Sorry, Ken. Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Yes, Ken, I have a couple of questions on the slide you were on. Yeah, that slide. That's it.
Sure.
Okay, so in your notes, the first one says municipality's direction is to upgrade the remaining 24 kilometers of LCB roads to HCB. And I'm just wondering how you were given that direction.
Go ahead, Ken.
Is it Go ahead. All that I was gonna say was we had discussion with Dawn about that. And we noticed that, you know, the cost you were paying for the LCBs. And we basically, our comment was, you know, they don't seem to be performing very well for you. And Dawn, you know, I think we've kind of suggested it in the report to do that. I'm not sure if this wording is maybe the perfect way to say direction, but it was sort of suggested that you may want to consider doing that because of the cost you've been experiencing with when you have such a small volume of roads with LCB and the performance. And Don was quite comfortable with the idea of making these, he thought it made sense to do this transition. So maybe the wording isn't quite the exact wording to say direction, or maybe suggested to upgrading them all, but that was the way we kind of presented it in here. Does that
Yeah,
answer the question?
that answers the question, Ken. I would agree with you that maybe the wording isn't exactly the right wording. Because I don't think at council we've provided any direction. But from a suggestion recommendation perspective, I understand the comment. But if I look a little more granularly at some of these roads, there's, I don't know, to my way of thinking, there might be a little bit more to consider rather beyond just whether it's LCB or HCB. So I looked at some out of the appendix that you did provide in the long report, some of the traffic counts, and I don't know specifically if these roads were actually had a traffic count, or it was a best guess, or just exactly where the data came from. But you know, for example, like the Corbett line traffic counts didn't really seem all that big, like 50 to 199. And I think somewhere in the vast verbiage of those reports, it said that you should start thinking about moving from an LCB road to an HCB road when you start getting around traffic counts of 400. So I'm just thinking about the cost benefit on those roads of moving them from LCB to HCB. Even though we might be getting a couple of quotes in that don't make sense in terms of how expensive they are, but there might also be drainage issues included in that, or I don't know, other pipes, other elements for the road reconstruction. So I just wasn't too sure how we came up with those roads, except that they seem to be, for the most part, the last LCB roads in existence, except for one small one in Centralia on Victoria east of Huron Park Road. That one isn't on this list. Also too, the Huron Street to Corbett, or Huron Street, Corbett line to the end, which is a dead end street, short little street. Traffic count for that was 0 to 49. So that's really where my question, the first one about the direction, was coming from, in terms of, you know, how did we sort of get there? Because I don't know that I would necessarily agree that all these LCB roads should be converted.
Thank you, Councillor Vaughn. Ken, any
Yeah,
comments?
and I think maybe it was, part of it was for simplicity. We thought we're generally saying most of these should be changed. There may be 2 or 3 exceptions. You might find some of them you decide that should be more appropriate just to convert them back to gravel. That is an option too. But for simplicity, we just showed to convert them all. And as you work your way through, some of them are not scheduled for being done for a few years. So it may be something that you reinvestigate at that time, the exact approach. And that's a fair statement if there's really low traffic volumes.
Councillor Vaughn?
No, I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, that all these roads are not the same.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Giberson, did you have a comment?
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. I do agree that the wording in the report or in this presentation that municipality's direction is very misleading. There is no council direction on this issue. This is a recommendation from staff to the consultant for these roads. And the decision to recommend this approach is that we have not had good performance with our LCV roads. So we have several things financially that are working against the municipality. So the tar and chip roads that have been done, we did not get the useful life. We do pay a premium because we don't have volumes of tar and chip roads to resurface. So we pay a premium price, and our history is we have not achieved the useful life. So it's a much more cost-effective solution to put a hot mix asphalt on these roads. And the evidence is out there, but it's strict looking at the condition of McTaggart line. So I just wanted to clarify with council, this is like an operational decision based on the best use of the municipal resources because of the situation we have in the municipality. We just do not have large volumes of LCV roads, and it's not performing. It hasn't been performing for probably a better part of a decade or more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Giverson. Mr. Oak, do you have something?
Yeah, thanks, Don, and thanks, Mayor. I agree on the LCB changing to HCB and a number of these roads. The traffic count might not be there, but there's a lot of heavy farm equipment nowadays, and the LCB roads can't handle the weight that we have on some of these roads, and the HCB would be a better fit on some of these. Definitely on some of these roads. So that's a factor that wasn't necessarily explained in your criteria though, but we are in a rural area with a lot of heavy farm equipment and heavy trucks on the road. So on the back roads delivering grain or fertilizer or whatever, so feed. I think that puts a toll on the not so rambunctious LCB roads sort of thing. So anyways, just a comment.
Thank you. Anything further? Oh, Deputy, go ahead.
I also agree with Councillor Oak. It's not just traffic. When the traffic is on the road, it's heavy traffic. And that's why this tar and chip is definitely not standing up. You can see that on any of them roads. It's really breaking up. And so I think this is a great suggestion to move ahead with. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Givers, oh, sorry, Councillor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yes, another question I have in this is some of these roads, all road widths are not the same. So paving and type of pavement is one thing, but also too, some of the heavy farm equipment is also wider farm equipment, and the shoulders don't always appear to be on some of these roads to even be able to handle the equipment from side to side. So is that not, if we're moving to upgrade, are we also not looking at potentially road widening or road structure, improving the road structure as it is? I didn't think it was quite as simple as changing out the road surface.
Mr. Giverson, comments to the road widening, et cetera?
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. Yes, they're all considerations. So what our consultant is trying to demonstrate here is trying to like a simplified presentation of that these are, he's identifying the LCB roads and the quantities. But when this information is used to develop a capital program, there's more complexities. So we're not going to use the data and this information in its most simplistic form. We do consider drainage improvements, shouldering, if they're substandard width. So all of those factors are considered when this information is finally converted to real life, where we are presenting a budget to council for the improvement. So it's only a part of the picture, but Ken is trying to just identify to council that these are the roads that are LCB and the approximate lengths. More than anything is to identify that there isn't that many of them. So we don't have a lot of kilometers of LCB roads, and that there is a very active plan in place, including the 2023 resurfacing that's tackling some of these roads, so that we do improve things for the public that use the roads. And I'm glad to see the support for a view more than just the traffic counts, because we have other users of the roads, the agricultural community, and we have other very active use of these roads. So those are also considerations beyond just the number of the actual traffic counts.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Giverson. Follow up, anyone? Okay, very well. We can continue on, Ken.
Okay. Hey, thank you. And I just might add one little comment with that. With this conversion to the HCB, we do include an allowance for some other improvements such as drainage, but as Don said, that you have to do a detailed assessment of each road section, and some it might be sufficient, some it may not be sufficient to allow for that extra work that's needed before you put your asphalt surface down. I will jump ahead to the next slide. Okay, so this next slide, it shows we've taken all the information, kind of assembled it together here in sort of a summary to illustrate the costs for capital improvements per year over the next, I guess we've got 14, 15 years there. And you can see that, we've ranges, the average is 2.1 million per year. And, it ranges from, I think we got 1.5 is the low up to 3.3. And these numbers are presented now. They don't take into consideration whether you get any grant funding or some other stuff. These are just anticipated costs. And they include the upgrades to the LCB roads to the HCB roads that we were just discussing in the previous slide. So those have been incorporated into these numbers, and assuming that work's going to try to proceed. So general improvements, generally only include capital cost for reconstruction or resurfacing of the roads. It excludes those numbers exclude the gravel resurfacing costs. Those are sort of under your maintenance costs. It includes an allowance to convert LCB roads to HCB where proposed. Unit costs are based on individual contracts for each road. Price adjustments included when the municipal staff may coordinate some of the work for some of the things they're comfortable with doing, some of that coordination work. So we've taken away some of the overhead that may be applicable. Economies of scale is something that you may be able to find advantages of. We didn't necessarily try to assume that you're going to do numerous roads at the same time, because sometimes you can get and save some money by doing that, by putting them together. Before undertaking capital improvements, consider the need of all the municipal infrastructure within the road allowance, whether it be water mains, your sanitary, your storm, your bridge and culverts. So it's just a suggestion to take those into consideration. But we have not included any pricing for that other work. Road condition, traffic volumes, construction priorities, they can change quickly due to things like water main breaks or culvert replacement, new development, and changes in driving habits. So the proposed year of improvements may have to be changed over time. We've tried to do our best guess to predict that far in the future, but sometimes roads deteriorate a little quicker than anticipated or not as quick as anticipated. This is just taking from the report, and it's a map that helps to illustrate the proposed year of the improvements. And it just helps, it's a little easier maybe for staff to kind of look at and see where the proposed work would be taking place within each year. And I'm not going to go into the details here, but it's just information map that helps. We provide other maps that show the road surface types, and just it's an easier way to visualize often for staff. Sidewalk assessment method. So we did a sidewalk assessment.
Ken, can I just interrupt for a moment, Ken, please? Councillor Vaughn has a question.
Sure.
Yes, Ken, before we move on to sidewalk, and just thinking about the comments you had in capital improvements, throughout the reports, I didn't see any indication of looking at our roads through a climate change lens. And over the past couple of years, we've had quite a number of presentations and commentary with staff and at council about how freeze thaw cycles and the frequency of them as a result of climate change are likely to impact the sustainability, longevity of our road system. And so I don't really see anything in your presentation or your backup work that talks about calculations or allowances for any kind of climate change. And I'm just wondering if any of that was kind of taken into account, or if there's anything that your firm is finding that the industry is moving towards to try to grapple with this ongoing or anticipated freeze thaw cycle phenomena with climate change.
Ken, any comments?
Okay, yeah, thanks for your question. I think I'm going to answer that sort of in two parts. One, we agree wholeheartedly that drainage and making sure you've got suitable drainage provided along your roadways is a very important part in the performance. And with our assessments, where it's been identified, we will indicate, oh, we see a drainage improvement need in this area, whether it be ditch cleanouts or sub-drain or something like that. And generally when we're doing road need studies, we're searching to try to find those locations to help provide the performance that you'd like to obtain from the road. Have we looked at it specifically in any extra way because of climate change? I'll admit we haven't, because we're generally looking at it all the time. And drainage is in our mind, the best way to kind of combat that potential risk of the climate change effects that you're going to see work their way through the roads. The second part of my comment is there are different construction methods that are being implemented, different asphalt products, different things. We don't necessarily look at them during the road need study. We're going to try to show just the tried and proved methods. And when you're going through individual projects, there might be times where different methods may be advantageous, but it's getting too detailed to try to implement all those potential things with a road need study where you're looking at, the 300 kilometers of road all at the same time. So we try to stick to fairly standard ones. And there may be some other methods that are being experimented and worked on by different, contractors and salesmen or whatever that introduce different products. And that's not necessarily what I was going to propose to talk about today, but there are other methods that may want to be considered.
Okay, follow up, Councillor Vaughn.
I guess what I'm hearing you say there in your second part of your answer was really in terms of a municipality might want to look at different types of asphalt product that might have some kind of accommodation to mitigate climate change impact? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, there are some, there's like introducing like a fiber material into asphalt. That's something that helps the road to be the crack susceptible. It adds a bit of a cost, but then they claim it helps to extend the life expectancy. So that's just one example I'll maybe put out there, but yes, certainly. And I think your staff are, you know, as they work through and they discuss with others as the projects are taking place, would probably be looking into other options. I know that product, we're using it for a downtown core in Kincardine, and there's others municipalities that are experimenting with it. Let's say it's not certainly not commonplace yet. There's others
Right.
experimenting and to try to get comfortable before they want to do everything that way yet. So
No, I can see that. I can see that it's not widespread. I'm just was wondering what you've seen going on in the industry. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I know sidewalks are coming up in their presentation here. And this is stated roads infrastructure, but I'm just wondering, is there any analysis, or maybe I missed it at the beginning when Rebecca mentioned on bridges and culverts? Is there analysis going to be done on as part of the road infrastructure, all the bridges and culverts and the types of construction, you know, with culverts and I'm just wondering, is that to come, or is that another phase? I'm just wondering. Thank you.
Mr. Giberson, could you take that, please?
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. The OSM inspection reports will be carried out this year. So that's a separate engineering assignment from this project. But you are correct that those are due to be done and will be carried out this year to confirm the condition of the any bridge culvert larger or 3 meters and larger, and that will be incorporated into future capital budget planning.
Councillor Oak, follow up.
Thank you, Don. And just the slide that you had, Ken, for capital improvement costs per year of need, obviously $32 million over the next 15 years is a lot of money, but I didn't see any cost in that graph for gravel for improved capital improvements of any gravel roads in there where we have to actually revamp a gravel road, like rebuild a gravel road that has deteriorated. There's no estimate in there in the next 15 years to have to do any of our gravel roads?
Ken, you can comment?
I believe with most of that, it would be something that's often addressed by, say, the municipal staff if something like that is done in a localized location. But we did not include, like, there might, I guess I noticed there's nothing identified. Sometimes there is stuff identified, but it might be less than 100,000. You know, or it might be small amount, like localized, like $10,000 worth of work here and there. Sometimes we identify that for localized repairs, but it didn't work its way through into the numbers here. So I'll maybe let Don comment if he had some other comments with regards to the gravel roads.
Go ahead, Mr. Giberson.
Through you, Mayor Finch. The reason why on the gravel roads there is 0 kilometers identified is because through this assessment, BM Ross did assess the condition of all the gravel roads as part of this assignment, and there were no sections of gravel road that were identified for within this horizon or this range that required full rebuild. So that's why it's not on this particular chart.
Thank you, Mr. Giberson. Okay, moving right along. Go ahead, Ken.
Jump ahead to sidewalk. I think this is where I left off. So with the sidewalk assessment, we assigned ID numbers to each of their corresponding with the road sections so that it's easy to tell where they're located. They're both the same ID section for the sidewalk as it was for the roads. We logged their properties, did the visual inspections, recorded the type of defects, and then we geo-referenced and we photoed each of the defects. The defects, as per the minimum maintenance standards, and then AODA, as we explained earlier, pertains to the new standards for reconstructed road sections. They're two different sets of standards, so the defects pertain to the one. And we prepared a summary of all the data that was collected, a list of the recommended repairs. Note the repair lengths, they include not only the defects, but they would also include repairs to address, say if there's cracking in the sidewalk, that, you know, it's just it's not a defect, it's not bad enough that it's a concern for potentially a trip or whatever, but it's a crack. Well, those would be included in the list of sidewalk repairs, but they may not be considered a defect according to the minimum maintenance standards because it's a smooth surface and you can pass over top of it still.
Okay. Go ahead,
So
Ken.
Is there a question?
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay. So on this next slide, we're showing that there was some defects that were identified, and then we've got recommended repair lengths. So as I said, these might be things that should be addressed in the near term, but these are recommended repairs to work on over time. And it may be that if some things don't get repaired as fast as they, you know, for a little while, you might have other defects that come up in future years. But as per the minimum maintenance standards, the municipal staff are required to review the sidewalks each year and check for localized defects that could be addressed. So continuing through it below here, the defects are, you'll notice on the right, there's a significant amount of repair costs projected, but this may be extended over quite a few years. And as long as they just maintain and check for those minimum, you know, do the localized repairs as they're working their way along, they can delay some of those repairs to the sidewalk. So the replacement recommendations are to primarily address the cracked panels that would otherwise over time become defects. Therefore, the completion of those repairs could help to, could be spread out for quite a few years. And replacement in lieu of repairs would be recommended when you've got sidewalks that are less than 1.5 meters wide, which is what the generally recommended sidewalk width is now for the AODA.
Councilor Oak, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And yeah, so the guidelines for AODA for trip and safety criteria, is there a spot where we could look at those, or have we reached out, or would we reach out to our Huron County Accessibility Committee to review our sidewalks as well? Is that a recommended practice to work with your accessibility committee?
So just to clarify, just to back up, so the minimum maintenance standards, they're the ones that talk about your trip hazards. The AODA standards, they're just how do you build a new sidewalk sort of thing. And I think the Huron County ones, they will only probably comment on how you build the new sidewalks. I don't think, like, the minimum maintenance standards are just to address sort of short-term deficiencies and things like branches hanging over the sidewalk and things like that.
Thank you.
Don may want to.
Mr. Givers, you have a comment?
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. So as Ken is pointing out, there are two issues here. The minimum maintenance standards do specifically specify a trip hazard, so a lip on like the amount of separation that's permissible, and it also includes minimum maintenance standards on or minimum standards on responses and to identifying any type of trip hazard. So those are always considered as part of the sidewalk maintenance activities, but also the number of those that exist go into the long-term planning for future replacements of sidewalks. So we are required to keep the sidewalks within the minimum maintenance standards. So those are addressed whenever they arise. The AODA, we do consult with the Huron County Accessibility group, and we take any opportunity to do AODA upgrades when they arise. So they are things like the tactile pads at intersections, any sidewalk ramping, and the sloping of that, and that is through reconstruction or repairs or utility removal of sidewalks. So we always look for those opportunities to improve to those AODA standards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garberson. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what is kind of the recommended material to be using for sidewalk, because you can go from anything from like cement to gravel and some mix of asphalt in between. And I'm just wondering, in terms of life cycle, what is generally a better practice to go for?
Mr. Garberson, do you want to comment?
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. Concrete is the material of choice for municipal sidewalks. Asphalt is sometimes used for pathways or walkway areas, and a lower grade surface such as crusher screenings, dust and chip would be suitable for a trail system. But for a municipal sidewalk within the municipal right of way, it would be concrete.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ken, you can continue.
This next slide just shows an example of the figures that are provided in the report, where we've shown where some of the defects were identified and the sidewalk section ID numbers throughout that. So this is the defect number, and there's the sidewalk ID numbers. So sidewalk condition ratings, the condition scores for the sidewalk replacement is based on defective length of sidewalk relative to the total length of the sidewalk. And as I was saying, these condition ratings, it doesn't just take into consideration where there's trip hazards. If there's cracks, we would, for this condition rating, we would still say that it's defective, but that doesn't mean it has to be fixed right away. It's not a minimum maintenance factor. But when we're doing condition ratings, if it's something that should be replaced as sidewalk, we would consider it a defective section. So the number of defects that are to be addressed to comply with the minimum maintenance standard is not used in calculating this per se, because we're including it up above. If it's got hazards like that, it's already going to be identified. It's not just the minimum maintenance standards that we're looking at to do this scoring for condition ratings. This figure down below gives a bit of a illustration as the length that are very poor sidewalks, and that's where you have more than 60% of the length is defective. And then we have if it's in the 30 to 60, we're calling it poor and fair. And we're showing down below here the sidewalk lengths going from very poor to poor, fair, good, and very good condition. So some concluding comments. With the report and going through consultation with staff, we're recommending a budget of over 2.2 million per year for capital improvements with the roads. Overall road systems, they appear to be in fair condition. However, many road sections are in poor condition. Most roads appear to be in fair condition, but there's many road sections that are in poor condition, and they're due for replacement or rehabilitation. If the LCB roads are not going to be frequently resurfaced, they should be converted to HCB roads or back to gravel. Provided priority scores on the road sections to help staff prioritize their improvements. Suggested budget numbers do not take into account savings that may be possible with economies of scale and with funding support from other departments or other levels of government. There are a number of sidewalk repairs that are short-term and longer-term identified. Consider reducing the sidewalk to one side of the street on some of the local roads. And on artillery and collector road, sidewalks probably should be provided on both, because you've got enough traffic and you don't want to have the pedestrians crossing over the road so much. So although the work scheduled for a 15-year period, the condition of the roads need to be monitored and adjusted, and the road priorities as a result may have to be adjusted. And it's suggested that you do another review in 5 years.
Councillor Oak, go ahead. One moment, Ken. Councillor Oak has a question.
Thank you. In your concluding comments there, you mentioned capital budget of over 2.2 million per year. Now, the presentation that was made in September, in the same presentation says 3 million per year. What's the difference in the 3 million versus the 2.2? What's changed?
Ken, go ahead.
I'm trying to remember what we changed. I think what we did was we stretched some of the work out over the time period, because we were maybe we identified a certain number of deficiencies, and we thought it would be appropriate to stretch that out over a time period to be more accommodating. And I think that was one of the adjustments that we looked at doing. And I'm not sure if there was some work that was some other adjustments. I think there was some other adjustments we had with municipal staff about them saying, well, we can manage some of these projects, do some of the coordinating ourselves. So we adjusted some of the unit prices. Trying to remember what other factors came into consideration before we adjusted those numbers. I think those are two of the main ones, unless you can think of something else, Don, that we adjusted.
Don, do you have any comments?
Yes, you Mayor Finch. One of the big differences is the original presentation had all our rural road paving as fully engineered and much higher unit price cost. So that was one of the requests to BM Ross to actually review our actual tendered costs for our rural paving, because we do receive a very good price for paving rural roads, and they are managed by the municipal staff. So it's completely carried out by our own forces. The design aspect, the project management, the tendering, all of those services. So that significantly reduced the cost. When we have a fully engineered road, like a road reconstruction project, then there are those engineering costs. So that was one of the factors in the change. But I would be happy to take the 3 million each year for road paving.
I'm sure. Mr. Oak, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to keep that number at 3 million and gradually do some of the gravel roads into paving as well. So, and use that 800,000 for that. So thank you.
Further discussion on that, I'm sure, Mr. Giverson. Mr. Dietrich, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's Ken, if I remember right. You had overall road system appear to be in fair condition. However, many road sections are in poor condition and due for replacement and rehabilitation. Did you red flag anything that should be done immediately, or how would you handle that?
Ken, comments?
With the ones that were identified, those ones were the ones that we would put near the top of the priority list that we have presented already in the next 2 or 3 years. So they have been sort of identified, and they've been incorporated in the near term. I guess I'm just going to say that the roads, they tend to work their way down into that poor condition before a lot of work, some of the work gets done. It's just typically the way it works that they're going to get down to that state. And we're anticipating that over the next so many years, your other roads will start working their way into that category. So I'm not sure that there's any, it's just the fact that there's some that are in that poor condition and due for rehabilitation.
Well, it's just that here a month ago, the roads were in poor condition. So I just wondered if you had looked at that time, or this is just kind of a report from out of the book from prior to.
Ken, any comment at all?
Well, the conditions, the assessments were done last year sort of thing. So they were done in the spring, and I believe these roads were done before some of the maintenance was taking place too, by some of the, we did it early in the spring, which is often helps to identify potential issues, but some of them would have been addressed with maintenance work too. So maybe should clarify that might be where some of the issues were addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Neeb, you had something. Go ahead.
Well, and I think too, like the one thing we were talking about earlier is the number of variables that there are too in the roads from year to year, depending on what's going on. I know there's some gravel roads that took a big beating when 83 Highway was shut down for reconstruction. And one of the items that I wanted to ask, and this is maybe a Dawn question or even a Maggie question, and it goes back to Councillor Vaughn's question about climate change's effect on our infrastructure. There was a few years ago, there was flooding in a municipality south of us, and a major road had been washed out. And maybe in terms of this plan, it doesn't apply. But as far as asset management, has there been any conversation about setting aside a certain amount in order to compensate for say flooding and roads being washed out or bridges being washed out? Because I know for that municipality, they didn't have money saved up. They weren't anticipating that road was going to be washed out. I'm thankful that we have the ABCA, and we do have fairly good roads, but it's just a matter of planning ahead for some of that. And I'm just wondering if there has been any thoughts as to putting any number on that or being able to quantify that possibility.
Mr. Giverson, do you want to comment?
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. I was very happy to hear that question about the climate change lens on the road network, because it is a very it's a serious issue, and it does need to be considered in the overall program for maintaining and owning these road assets. So some of the things that staff are doing to address the climate change issue, Ken just touched on a couple of them. That I've always maintained that water is a killer. If you do not have proper drainage on roads, then it will affect the performance of that road, the lifespan of that road. So with climate change, it just exacerbates that situation. So if we don't have proper designed roads and proper drainage, then you're going to have the road base, the base gravel, not draining properly. So if you get the wild fluctuations in temperature with climate change, you will get that freeze thaw effect through the winter that is more prevalent today than it was years ago, where it would freeze in the winter and it would stay frozen. So now we're getting above freezing temperatures through the winter, cycling constantly. So to address one of the climate change issues, impacts on roads, we need to be much more mindful of improved drainage to ensure that the base of the road is drained, so we don't have that. You try to minimize the impact of the freeze-thaw cycle. The flooding issue is also another climate change impact that also needs to be addressed. And one of the issues that constantly comes up with new developments and redevelopments is stormwater management. And if we are vigilant on stormwater management, that whole philosophy is to minimize, prevent the downstream flooding as we get impacts, from redevelopment or development of land. But climate change is significantly impacting that issue. So those are the two main initiatives with road networks to try to deal with climate change impacts on the structure of the road, but also flooding, drainage issues with employing proper stormwater management.
Thank you, Mr. Garberson. I think Ms. Delbridge is on the line there. Hello, Maggie, how are you?
Hi, thank you. Through you, Mayor Finch. Aaron spoke to, Councillor Neves spoke to the asset management plan, so I just wanted to touch base. It is something that I've been trying to do as much research as I can the last few years on it. Looking at our asset management plan with that climate lens hasn't been something that we've integrated yet, but I'm hopeful in our next asset management plan that we can. And what I see that meaning for us is how we communicate our risk to the public. So here's our risk, and then when we build in the climate change lens, here's the risk to the corporation, factoring in the impacts of climate change. So that's how I expect that to be shown through the asset management plan in the future.
Great. Thank you for that comment. Anything else from members of council? Okay, we'll go back to Mr. Garberson. Do you have anything further?
No, through you, Mayor Finch. No, I didn't want to add anything further. Just to add one more thing to what Maggie is saying about the educational component of climate change. Because if we're looking at the bigger picture with climate change impact on all of our infrastructure, raising awareness that climate change is very real, and it has there is an impact on all of our infrastructure. So raising awareness then also assists with properly addressing the issue. So adapting to climate change is this other aspect of it, but the climate change lens should be applied to everything we do, including road condition assessments.
Great. Those are great comments too. Thank you very much, Garberson. And Ken, do you have anything else? You have the final word.
No, I think it's you've talked about the climate change already, and I agree with Don saying you have to look at it for all your assets. Bridges is certainly someplace where we're seeing issues, maybe a little more obvious than with the roads, but it's correct. They do have an impact on the roads with that freeze thawing and other aspects. And if Maggie's able to incorporate some parts and risks, whether that be allowing some funds that may help you, it could be used in one area or another. But that's something I'll let you work your way through. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about your your infrastructure, road infrastructure, and we're available if you have other questions that come up after.
Great. Thank you very much, Ken. We appreciate the work you've done on behalf of South Huron for this project. Councillor Oak, you have another comment.
Yeah, just on the climate change as well. I agree. It's a factor. This past winter has been a perfect example. We didn't have a real cold winter and the freezing and thawing and the mild weather in January. It was tough on all our roads, and so it affected how when we did have snow and the roads weren't froze, it affected how things, the maintenance part. So yeah, the weather is fluctuating, and when you don't have a real cold winter, it changes how the roads react to the climate, so.
Great, thank you. And that's all. We'll turn to Ms. Masua Collison for the recommendation, please.
The South Huron Committee of the Whole receives the State of the Roads Infrastructure presentation from Ken Lugtenberg, P.Eng of BM Ross and Associates Limited. And the South Huron Committee of the Whole recommends that South Huron Council adopts the State of the Roads Infrastructure Report as prepared by BM Ross and Associates Limited, revised January 17th, 2023.
And as a mover, moved by Counselor Denby, seconded by Counselor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries a 7. Thank you very much. Number 5.
That South Huron Committee of the Whole does now adjourn at 5:26 PM.
Like Deputy Mayor, second by Counselor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries a 7. Thank you very much, everyone. Meeting adjourned.